Hey, what is up, everybody? And yes, I know I've been inactive about the past few days. I'm very behind on certain videos I have to be doing, and one of them is this video series right here, and that is the Halloween movie review series. But I'm back doing it once again. Um, I know I have a lot to catch up on. Technically, I'm very behind because I'm supposed to be on day 25 now, but because I've been busy with other things, I had a couple of tests to study for. I had to study for a biology test on Monday, then a math test on Wednesday, so I kind of had to put the Halloween movie review series on hold for a few days. But what I'm going to do is to kind of catch up and make sure that I do 31. I'm going to within the span of today and tomorrow review, catch up to, I'm technically supposed to be on day 26 by tomorrow. I'm going to make sure I do just that. So I'm going to, yeah, I have to pretty much, in the span of 2 days, watch 6 movies, because technically I'm on number 20, because I've done 19 of them so far. So yeah, um, this thing, doing this series was kind of starting to take a toll on me, and I was actually kind of starting to feel relieved um, as I was doing it because I was getting closer to the end. Um, and even though I've enjoyed the series, I just fatigue. I've watched a movie a day. Now I'm going to feel it even more because I have to watch 6 movies in the span of 2 days. It just yeah, I just find it kind of funny how the now that I'm at the last tail end of it, it's gonna get harder. So that's just how it works, I guess, right? So I'm gonna make sure, though, that I finish out and make sure I get to all 27. Well, no, to all 31 of them. Today's gonna be 20, but I think about it like this: I only have 10 more of these to do, so let's just breeze right through them. So yeah, technically, um, I have 19 up, and when I was putting this series together last month, I had realized that. So yeah, I want to make sure you guys know this is number 20. So yeah, no, this isn't actually 25. This is number 20. The next few are gonna be catch-ups. Hopefully until I get to 26. Um, but when I was putting this series together last month, the first 19 of them were all horror movie stuff because normally horror movies kind of makes it feel like it's Halloween because that's like the spirit of Halloween. Um, but um, I also wanted to kind of have those few days where everything wasn't just focused around horror movies. I wanted to have things that I wanted to have diversity into my this series. So I wanted to get comedy. I wanted to get a family type of movie. A lot of this is based around horror movies, but I wanted to have a different, genre when it came to this series. So the next 3 are going to be comedy movies. And so the next 3 are going to be comedy, and the next one that I'm actually doing is going to be Ghostbusters. That's this one, and then that's the next 2. I figured I would do that series because it's pretty damn popular. Um, Pretty much everybody knows about it. It was a huge movie that came out in the 80s that still um, resonates to this day. Everybody at least watches it. You could actually at least watch it. And there's actually things that would be in that movie that um, I think people in my generation would definitely get. And yeah, I think this movie, I don't think it's like a perfect masterpiece as termed of how the movie comes together, but I think it's a classic. And I still think it's actually really good. I do enjoy this movie. I've actually had to go back and rewatch it 3 times because of the fact that I got busy doing other stuff, and I wanted to watch it just in one sit-in, and I didn't really get to do that. So, yeah. So, let's get right into this, shall we? So, I'm going to kind of go through the history of this movie. I'm going to kind of skim the Wikipedia page and been kind of skimming it. So, this movie was inspired by Dan Aykroyd because he was fascinated with paranormal activity, and him and his friend, who was a Saturday Night Live alumni, or alumnus, John Belushi, started to come up with this story. Now, originally they had a different story that was supposed to be made. They were supposed to have had this where they were going to be, instead of the Ghostbusters, they were going to be the Ghost Smashers, and they were going to have kind of the same type of, you know, the same concept, except they were going to have, they were going to go around into different planets and actually destroying big giant ghosts, and instead of using what they actually ended up using in the movie, they ended up using they ended up using magic wands. And I think if you go online somewhere, you could find the story out of exactly what I'm talking about. But then eventually, when you know Dan Aykroyd produced this idea to pitch this idea to Ivan Reitman. It was turned down because the movie would have had such a huge budget. The budget would have been too high. So, ironically enough, they had to take they had to rewrite the movie. So they ended up writing the movie in the span of 3 weeks in Martha's Vineyard bomb shelter in May to June of 1982, which I actually thought was kind of interesting. So then they started production. They had they had famous you know I'm just going to read it word for word. Notable illustrators hired by associate producer Michael C. Gross to provide stories and concept art envisioning the ghost and other psychic phenomena encountered by that film's characters included Thom and Ryzik, and I don't know how to say his last name, Bernie Winston, and Hanno Libator. John D. Chor, who was known for his elaborate sets, was hired as production designer slash art director. And the ghosts were visualized as puppets were built by Boss Films, which was handled composing of special effects shots. And they even go into the history of how they created certain things in this movie, which I actually thought was interesting. For the casting, they originally wanted to get John Candy to play Louis Tully. However, John Candy was committed to other projects, so it didn't really work out that way. They also wanted to get I'm just trying to find his name. They also wanted to get Blushy to play a role, but he ended up dying around just before the movie came out, so it didn't really work out that way either. I won't really get into detail about how he died because this isn't the video for it. So they pretty much had to change the character roles. And yeah, anything else? Yeah, that's about it. And then obviously they go into the filming of this movie. This movie was started being filmed in Manhattan in late October 1983. They filmed at locations like at Columbia University, the Ivan Trust Bank, and they filmed all over the place. Then eventually the movie itself, I'll just kind of go over now and structure the movie how I've been doing it. It was directed by Ivan Wheatman. He also produced the movie. It was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. The music was done by Elmer Bernstein. The cinematography was done by, I have no clue how to say his name, but Laszlo Kovacs, and it was edited by David E. Lewitt and Sheldon Kahn. This movie was produced by Dolphin Films in Black Rhino Productions. It was distributed by Columbia Pictures. This movie actually has two release dates. It came out on June 7th, 1984 in Westwood, and then on June 8th, the next day, 1984 in the United States. And this movie had a $30 million budget, so a lot of money went into putting this movie together. And you can clearly see that with the way that the movie was. The movie looked great. Was in pretty great quality. Was in pretty good quality, and obviously with all the special effects they did in this movie, you could clearly see a lot of money went into this movie. Normally, if there's a low budget movie, they don't have a lot of that type of stuff. So that's kind of how it goes. So now that I've kind of done all that, let me actually get to the movie. Start talking about the movie itself. So the movie kicks off at a library, and we meet an old librarian. I don't remember her name off the top of my head because I just don't. You would think too. I've seen this movie like 3 times now, at least this scene, and I don't remember this person's name. That just kind of shows you how bad I am with names. But pretty much she's putting books away, and behind her they see books just going all over the place and being put into different bookcases just by themselves. No one's touching them or anything. At first, the librarian doesn't notice this, but then when the librarian walks, then she continues her job, and then she's by a ton of filing cabinets, and all the filing cabinets just open by themselves, and a bunch of papers just fall right out of them, just come right out of them. So then this freaks out the librarian. She runs away, and we don't see anything else that happens. Then the movie kicks off with the actual theme song, and obviously I'm assuming everyone's heard the theme song. Something strange in the neighborhood. We're gonna call Ghostbusters. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So we open the scene actually opens up. We meet the main characters. It's Peter Venkman, Raymond Ray Stantz, and Egon um, Spengler. I don't know how to say his last name. And they call Raymond Ray for short. And we find out that they're scientists. Peter Venkman has a degree in psychology and physics. And Egon and Ray have also are scientists, and they pretty much study ghosts pretty much. And the opening scene when we first see them is Dr. Venkman is doing a test on students about about Sidekick. So he has this thing where he's holding the code, and the person has to guess the code without seeing it. Like the person has Sidekick powers, and which is pretty interesting. And one of the funny jokes about this was Doctor, and I forget the kid's name, but there was a student who he would just say what the card was wrong every time. One of the times he got the card right, and if he got the card wrong, you would get electrocuted, like a small electric shock. And yeah, every time no matter what he said, there's an answer. Whether he got the card right or wrong, he would shock him. And there was a beautiful young woman who got it wrong every time, and he just said that she got it right every time, and this pisses him off, so he storms off. He's trying to kind of flirt with this girl, which was kind of weird because he looks like he's probably in his 30s here, and she's like a college student. But then they find out they get a call to go to the library, and because they've heard some paranormal activities, so and then Ray comes in. And, Dr. Venkman doesn't believe in any of this stuff because normally when they meet people, they're normally either people who are on drugs, have schizophrenic activity or just are nuts. So one funny thing was Egon was listening under the table to see if he could hear some paranormal activity with a stethoscope, and Dr. Vegman comes in and just smashes the table, which I thought was which hurt his ears. When I had first seen this, I just thought he did this to a random guy to be an asshole, but that wasn't the case. So then I guess the person who owned the library comes in, and they try, they're asking, the librarian's telling them everything that they saw. One funny moment was, Peter was asking them, if any member of their families ever had any schizophrenic experiences, and then she says, "My uncle thought my uncle thought he was Saint Jerome," and then he's like, "I'm going to call that a yes." So then they go down and explore the library to see if they can find any ghosts. And what they find is there's just books that are just stacked up absolutely perfect. And Egon was using this device that probably reads. They didn't really explain what it did, but that reads probably paranormal activity. And then when they go to those filing cabinets that I talked about earlier, they see that it's covered in plasma, an ectoplasma, I believe is what they call it. So Egon has Peter get him a sample, and I thought it was pretty funny with the way he was getting the sample and was wiping it off, and I thought that was pretty funny. And then when they walk over, a bookcase falls over, and then they see a ghost librarian, and they try to communicate with it. It doesn't work. So they'll all just try to go right after him. The librarian scares them away. It just actually turned into a actual monstrous ghost, which was pretty funny. And then Egon says that pretty much Bill. Sorry, I messed up his name. Peter then says that it wasn't the greatest idea for us all to charge at him. What a great scientific idea. And Egon realizes that they may be close to actually catching a ghost. So I guess they made a bet that, that he wasn't going to be able to get a ghost, so he got a candy bar out of it. And then they find out they originally worked for Columbia University. They funded all their science program, so they pretty much got fired. They were told they were told they were not going to fund any of them. And the dean makes fun of Peter because he calls him a bad scientist because his observations are weak, his methods are sloppy, and his conclusions are questionable. So then later on, Peter and Ray have a conversation, and Peter's actually if you ever seen an old Disney movie where after something bad happens, they say, well, no, maybe this could lead to this, this, this. They kind of did that whole scene, but kind of did a parody of it, which I actually kind of thought was funny. And they pretty much decided to go into business for themselves. And they have Ray sell his old house that he was born in, that his parents had left him, and then they buy an old abandoned firehouse to do their business in. Egon's doesn't really thinks that this building should be condemned, but because Ray was able to go down the fire pole, he thought the place was cool, so they bought the place anyways. They even make their own commercial, which is shown, and I'll get to how it's shown later on, where they talk about how if you see any ghosts, call us, we're the Ghostbusters. And the commercial was bad, but this was one of those commercials that was so bad it was supposed to be good because it was just so awkward. Then what happens next? Also, they have their own banner now on the firehouse. They even get their own little police car that has a siren that was a Ghostbusters a Ghostbusters police car, which was pretty funny. And they actually went into a whole story about how that was designed. Um, about, you know, yeah, um, it says the Echodomobile is what they call it, is in the first draft of Aykroyd's script and visualized through concept drawings by John Dave, Dave, Davikis. I don't know how to say his last name. Early versions of it were jet black and featured more fantastic features such as the ability to dematerialize and evade police pursuit. The vehicle used for the Ectomobile during filming was modified 1959 was a modified 1959 Cadillac Millimeter with an aftermarket ambulance conversion. Stephen Dane created its high-tech roof array in Hollywood with various objects including a directional antenna, an air conditioning unit, storage boxes, and a radome. Because of its size, the roof rack was shipped to Manhattan via airplane while the car had to be transported to the East Coast via train. Sound designer Richard Bakes created the car's distinctive siren from the snarl of a leopard, cut and played backwards, which is actually makes sense now because it did kind of sound like a leopardy type of voice. But anyhow, and obviously a business wasn't very successful because paranormal activity really wasn't something that was all that common. So it wasn't business was slow at first. You know, normally in a movie, when you start up a business, it doesn't normally go successful. They even hired a secretary, Janine, and then finally we cut to now a lot of this didn't happen in order. I just kind of just said everything that had happened. Then we meet um, Dana Barrett. She lives by herself in an apartment, and um, Louis Tully, who is pretty much a nerdy figure. Obviously, he wasn't supposed to be this way. He was supposed to be a comedian, but because John Candy didn't do the role, and instead um, Rick Moranis did, they gave him a nerdy character because he kind of looks like a nerdy figure, and he probably has like the most annoying voice you could ever have. But in movies, sometimes you're supposed to have the annoying, nerdy type of person. Um, I don't know why that is, but sometimes you have to have those type of people. The nerdy type of person that always wants to go after. I don't want to say the popular girl, but the um, um, pretty girl. Um, but yeah, pretty much. He talks about pretty much just goes on forever about nothing. Pretty much, he talks about how he's having an accountant party with all of his clients, which is and he wants her to stop by, and she said that she'll see if she can, and um, then we find out that somebody had put in a complaint to the manager because her TV was left on and it was too loud. So then she thought that was suspicious because she didn't realize she left it on, which what we find out later she probably didn't leave it on. So then um, Lewis goes on this whole thing about how he it's actually pretty funny. He goes on this whole thing about how then he tried to like climb up the ledge and disconnect the cable box, but instead what he decided to do was left his TV on really loud, and then when she closes the door, he he pretty much got shut down, and then he leaves all disappointed, and he's like, and he makes sure to mention to tell her that he was taking a shower. Guess he wanted to give her that visual. And obviously, a constant joke that kept coming out of this movie was every time Lewis came out of his apartment, he always got locked out, which was really funny. Um, and it got funnier and funnier every time. Now you could say that probably the joke wore thin, but I just thought it was funny. Um, so then Dana comes home. She finds the Ghostbusters commercial. What a coincidence! She sees it right before what's about to happen, and um, she had come from the grocery store, and she had bought a carton of eggs. And as she's putting the groceries away, the eggs start cracking. Someone's cracking the eggs by themselves. They just crack by themselves, and the eggs cook on the counter. So this creeps out Dana. Then she hears something in the refrigerator. She opens it, and she sees creatures snarling, and one of them says Zool. And this freaks her out. Um, and I thought the way this looked really cool. Like when she opens it, you instantly see it like go into like into a paranormal universe. It looked really cool. Um, then the next day, um, well, a couple of days later, she goes to the Ghostbusters about it. Ghostbusters are all happy because they got the first customer. She was the first one, and she talks. She pretty much says everything that happens. Um, Peter doesn't believe her. You know, they even have her take a lie detector test to see if she's telling the truth because of all the situations I've talked about earlier. Ray offers to look at the way that that the building was designed and to see if there's been any telepathic activity. Egon recommends doing this, and Dr. Venkman um, off- offers to take Dana back to her apartment to check her out. I mean, check it out, because he actually had a thing for her. He instantly saw butterflies when she came in. So they go back. They go back to the to her apartment. He's trying to be a badass, and he's trying to pretend he knows what he's doing. Because the whole story behind Dr. Venkman is he actually didn't believe he really was a scientist because he didn't really know a lot of the scientific terms. Um, he had like this machine that he probably had no idea how to use because when she asked him about it, he didn't. He just said it's technical. It's one of our little toys. He didn't really know how to use it. Um, then they go back to the kitchen and they see the eggs cooked, but then they don't see anything in the refrigerator. So he pretty much doesn't believe her about what happened because so she's upset. Like either there's a I'm having a paranormal activity or I'm going completely crazy. So then later on, Dr. Venkman pretty much confesses his love for Dana Barrett. He pretty much says, you know, that all he has is his work and nothing else. And um, he says that, we both have the same problem. Dana Barrett isn't having any of this. So she's like, yeah, it's you. So um, she tells him to leave, and then he says, then she threw me out of her life because she thought I was a nerd. Um, so then he says that he's going to prove to her and solve this case and become famous out of this ghost busting business um, and win her affection. And she throws him out of the house. This scene was funny because he's even like, I'm going to find out what makes you tick, and I'm gonna make sure that, and you're gonna wonder what. No, actually, that sounds wrong. You're gonna want to know what makes me tick, and I'm gonna want to know what makes you. And you'll want me to know what makes you tick. And she's like, "Oh, I bet I will." And then when she shoves him out, he comes back in and he says, "No kiss," and then she just shoved him right back out. I thought that was hilarious. And then later on in the night, they're all having dinner. They finally get a call, which is the first one. So they gear up and they get all geared up. Um, and one of the things that they were using was a okay, um, was a I'm trying to remember what it was because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. A proton pack weapon that causes catastrophic explosions. I don't think that's what they said in the movie. I know for a fact that wasn't what they said. But they get a call. It was this hotel that when they go to the 12th, that is haunted on the 12th floor, and it's always been that way. But things didn't really start becoming really bad until a couple of weeks ago. Now, when this happened, I thought this was going to be like a prank or something, that these the people in the hotel were pranking them, but it wasn't. But thought it was going to be a prank, but it wasn't a prank. So then they go upstairs, they see the ghost, and because they've never done this before, earlier they think they see the ghost, and it's actually the maid, and they shoot their proton packs at the maid, and they miss the maid, but they could destroy her cleaning set. So then they see the ghost. They struggle to get the ghost. It runs right at Peter, and eventually they go into the dining room. And after so much time of struggling, Peter and Egon hold down the ghost with the proton packs and slowly lower it down into the trap, and they catch the ghost. And this pretty much set off them into fame. They became famous after this, and they do a montage of them going to finally becoming famous, their company instantly growing, and everybody knew who they were. They became celebrities pretty much, and I liked it. And they got so busy, they ended up hiring more help. They hired Winston Zedmore. Now, I actually did some more research, and Winston Zedmore actually was supposed to have had a bigger role than he did in the film, but they wrote out some of his stuff um, because and for more roles for Peter Venkman. We find out that it even says it right here. An earlier version of the script had his character Winston in a larger role with an elaborate backstory as an Air Force demolitions expert. Excited by the part, he agreed for the job. And this is according to Ernie Hudson, who plays his character. Um, who for half his usual salary. The night before shooting began, he was given a new script with a greatly reduced role. Reedman told him the studio had wanted to expand Murray's role, who Bill Murray plays Peter Venkman. In a 2015 article for Entertainment Weekly, Hudson wrote, "I love the character and he's got some great Linus, but I felt the guy was just kind of there. I love the movie, but I love the guys. I'm very thankful to Evan for casting me. I'm very thankful that the fans appreciated the Winston character, but it's always been very frustrating, kind of a love-hate thing, I guess. I mean, I can't blame him. I mean, well, one, if I'd be pretty pissed too if my role was changed with it. Literally the night before, I was just about to go shoot it and to be taken into this big movie, and I actually did kind of feel that way too. What was the point of his character? They pretty much wrote off his character. Pretty much, he really didn't do anything. You didn't know anything about him. He was just there. I didn't really care for that too much. But later on, so yeah, they hire more help. Then later on, um, Peter goes to see Dana, and we find out more about her case. We find out what Zool was. Zool was actually a henchman, not a henchman, but kind of a servant to um I'm trying to find where it has it. Zool was a demigod worshipped as a servant to Gauzer the Gazarian, who was a shape-shifting god of destruction. Um, and yeah, so pretty much that's what she was, and then they offer to go over and have a date later. And she was talking. We find out she's a musician, and she was talking to one of the people she performs with, and he asked who that was, and she says that was just a friend, just an old friend. And then he asked what he does. And he's like, he's a scientist. And she said that he doesn't feel like a scientist. He's more like a game show host. Um, then later on in the movie, when he goes over, Dana Barrett sneaks back in to her apartment. She had tried to avoid that accountant party, but she got caught by Lewis, which you know. Then when she told him that she had a date, he was upset to hear about this. So then she's like, "Well, maybe we'll see if we can stop by," which probably wasn't going to happen. Then after she gets off the phone with her mom after getting ready for the date, um, we see these arms like of a beast just pop right out of her chair and hold her back and bring her and just drag her right to the kitchen. And when we see this later on, we see that um, that there was like these phoenixes on like these statues on the on the building, and we see that one's missing. So obviously we know what that was what that statue was. And earlier in the movie, Egon had talked about um, how something greater could open up in the atmosphere more than we could ever imagine, because Ray was showing Winston how to insert a trap into the um, in a ghost containment system. So this was what he was talking about. So then later on, when Peter goes to see Dana, we see that she's been possessed. We find out that she's been possessed by Zool, and she's pretty much feeling very sexual. Um, she continuously asks him if he's the key master, um, and he, and she talks about how we're gonna prepare for the night of Ghoul, no Gozer, and he keeps saying, "I want to talk to Dana. Let me talk to Dana." And then she keeps saying, "There's no Dana, only Zool." And then eventually, when he keeps asking, then she says in a deep voice, "There is no Dana, only Zool." And then she starts lifting up off the ground, and this kind of concerns Dr. Bakeman. Then later on, at the accountant party, this actually already happened, but I figured I'd just talk about that all at once. During the accountant party, there was another ghost in Lewis's apartment in a closet, and when he hears the beast snarling, it bursts right out of the closet. Lewis takes off. He goes into the elevator, and he takes off running. The ghost goes right after him, and um, when everybody sees it, they get concerned, and he tries to go to a restaurant, tries to get people's help, but everyone just continues eating. It doesn't even give a shit that he's being fucking attacked. They just sit there and let it happen, which was very funny. Then, yeah, he gets possessed, and later on, the police find him. He keeps asking some people if he's the gate keeper. He asks a horse, and Egon says they better put him in. And Janine actually is continuously flirting with Egon. She seems to like him, which they never really kind of went anywhere with. And then when they go into the room, we find out that he's been possessed by the ghost. Um, I'm trying to remember the ghost. I'm trying to look up the ghost's name. Vince, and he wants to meet the Keymaster. So then Dr. Vikman calls Egon, and he says that pretty much we don't want to get the Keymaster and Vince together. Then the Gatekeeper. They call him the Gate. No, sorry, I got that wrong. Zool is the is the Gatekeeper, and Vince is the Keymaster. So then Peter comes over. We find out he actually had drugged Zool, which was pretty funny. So then he goes back to the headquarters. Now earlier in the movie, he had a confrontation with Walter Peck, who was the lawyer, who was a lawyer representing the Environmental Protection Agency, and he wanted to make sure that his place was environmentally safe. So he wanted him to bring him down to the ghost containment system, but he refused. So he came back with a court order. He came back with a cease and desist, all that stuff, and he orders the machines to be shut off. But then everybody, the Ghostbusters are trying to warn them not to turn these machines off, but they do it anyways, and this causes all the ghosts to get released, pretty much. And it actually kind of showed this montage of all the ghosts getting released, and we even saw some of the ghosts that the Ghostbusters I caught earlier. And as this happens, we see that Vince had escaped, and he was on his way to go see the Gatekeeper, Zool, who had woken up from being drugged. And then they eventually finally meet, and they pretty much kiss, and this opens the door up to Gozer, so Gozer can enter their world. And then the Ghostbusters have been taken to jail. We find out though that we have the blueprints for the apartment, and we find out that this apartment was built. We find out pretty much that it wasn't supposed to be made this way. This apartment was pretty much made for the purpose of opening a spiritual world. We find out it was, made for a Dr. Ivan Shatner, who was pretty much mad. He was a cult leader who had a following, and he said that humanity was sick. So after World War I, he had created this place and did some questionable tests to bring the end of the world, which actually I thought was a nice story, actually. So then they get called into by the mayor. The mayor doesn't really know what to do about this. Walter Peck thinks that everybody was just hallucinated, pretty much, these ghosts, and it was just caused by their explosion with the chemical waste by the Ghostbusters ghost containment chamber. But everybody doesn't think so. Even a priest. I don't think it was a priest. It was pretty much the Jewish version of a priest. I don't remember exactly what the name of what do you call a priest who's a Jewish version of a priest. The rabbi, I think it's called. So because he was wearing like a yarmulke on him, and he tries to convince him that it's an act of God, and they continue fighting back and forth. Peter Venkman actually said that, yes, it's true, Walter Peck has no dick, and he kept calling him Mr. Pecker, which I thought was funny. So they believe the Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters then send the entire military and police force over to that apartment, and we see that apartment just pretty much open. And the Ghostbusters come out and they get this massive ovation. Everybody's cheering them, and then an earthquake starts to happen, so they start to fall in. And when they come out, they go into but they end up surviving it. I actually kind of thought that was nice. It was kind of funny because it was out of nowhere, but I thought that was kind of a nice touch. And then they have to go up these 20 stairs, and you can see that they're getting exhausted, and they're supposed to be these heroic heroes, but yet they're coming up all exhausted. And then when they come up, Dana and Lewis morph into ghostly hound dogs, and Gozer actually comes out. She comes out as a woman because she's a shapeshifter. She's whoever you want to see. Originally, they had the idea that she was supposed to come out as Ivan Shandor, which I thought would have made complete more sense, but I guess they wanted to get that motto in there. So then, pretty much, Ray steps up to confront her. She asks him if he's a god, and he says no. So then she shocks all of them. And Winston actually said, next time somebody asks you if you're a god, say yes. And then they attack her. She jumps over their energy packs. I forget what their name, but they're, you know what I'm talking about. Their proton packs. And then they eventually get her, but we find out that they didn't really get her. She's pretty much going to shapeshift. She tells them, you choose what to shapeshift as your destruction. And everybody's told to clear their minds, but it's already been chosen. And Ray had thought of the Puff Marshmallow Man, who used to be on the Marshmallows, and he was like the mascot for it. And a big Puff Marshmallow Man walks over and goes to destroy the town. He starts climbing up the building. The Ghostbusters try to shoot him with their proton packs, and then instead, what they decide to do is to shoot into the paranormal world, to shoot right into Gozer's place. You know, it said that they could possibly kill them, but it's worth the risk. So they do it, and then a big explosion happens, and the Puff the Marshmallow Man bursts into a million pieces, and a bunch of marshmallow gets on Walter Peck, which was good comeuppance, and you know it gets all over the place. And when Dr. Vakeman comes to, he sees that he thinks that pretty much we were supposed to have thought that Dana had died, and because she was in that she was Zool, and she starts to break out, so everybody breaks her out, and they end up saving her. They also ended up saving Lewis, and they want to experiment with him about what it was like to be possessed. And then the movie ends with the Ghostbusters coming out in triumph. Everybody, cheers for them, and they're looked at as heroes. And Dana and Peter Venkman kiss. And what was funny is when Lewis comes out, nobody gives a shit about him. No one looks at him as a hero or anything. When Egon comes out, Janine, is checking on him. And overall, I thought that was pretty funny. And actually, Winston, before this happens, but they were looking at his hero, he says, I love this fucking job. And it was great. I loved it. And I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really good. I thought this movie was really good. Now it's also a classic, but I also really enjoy it. I liked the story in this movie. I liked how it was simple to follow. I thought the movie was very funny. I thought the effects looked really good. And the only complaint I have about this movie is you didn't really get a lot of character development. You just really didn't. Egon really was just kind of a that typical scientist, but he didn't really go through any character change. Peter Venkman kind of was. The whole story was that he didn't that he was built to not know what it was about to be a scientist, and they didn't experiment with that as much as I thought they should have. And obviously Winston was a thrown-in character randomly. So I didn't really think there was a lot of character development in this movie. If you really want me to be honest, I think that they could have done better with that. And obviously, I thought but overall, I thought the movie was really good. If I had to rate this movie, I give it an 8 out of 10. I thought this movie was really good, um, and I think that it's one of those movies you have to see. It's a classic, and this movie is very famous. The box office draw, it drew 295.2 million people in box office draws. I think that's very impressive. Um, when it came out to 100,339 theaters, and it grossed 3.6 million on its opening weekend, and 23 million in its first week, setting studio records at the time. The film was number one at the box office for 5 consecutive weeks, grossing 99.8 million. After 7 weeks, it was finally knocked to the number two position by Prince's film Purple Rain, at which point it had grossed 142.6 million. And then um, it went on to gross like a 229.2 million, making it the second highest film uh, grossing film of 1984, behind only Beverly Hills Cop. Adjusted for infiltration, these figures put it within the top 40 highest grossest films of all time. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 60 million tickets in the U.S. in its initial theatrical run. A 1985 re-release raised the film's United States gross to 238.6 million, which would be 533 million in today's dollars, surpassing Beverly Hills Cop and making it the most successful comedy of the 1980s. And a lot of people like this movie. I think there's only been like the only person that didn't like this movie was because they didn't like it because of character development. That's the only like negative review that I've seen, and like I said, that's a negative part of the movie, but I don't think that brings down the whole movie. You had some good, I also liked some of the dynamics that some of these characters had, like Peter Weichman and Dana Barrett was really good. I thought that Walter Peck and Peter Weichman was very good. They had a good altercation. Dana Barrett and even though his character was annoying, Lewis, um, and I even liked Janine's role in the movie. And this movie was just funny. It was good. It was kind of a nice way to take in the approach of Paranormal Activity, to kind of take in a comedy approach to it. So I kind of liked it. I liked it. Really good movie. So now let me go through the cast. You had Peter Weichman, who was played by Bill Murray. He did a great job playing Peter Weichman. Bill Murray pretty much makes the movie. Um, he nailed this role, and I thought he did a fantastic job. He was funny when he needed to be funny. He just really owned his character. Raymond Stantz, or Ray for short, was played by Dan Aykroyd. I thought Dan Aykroyd did a good job in this movie as well. Egon Spengler was played by Harold Ramis. I thought Harold Ramis did a good job as well. Winston Zeddemore was played by Ernie Hudson. He did fine, but like I said, he didn't really have a big role, so I can't really. But he did good with the role that he had, though. He made his screen time work. Janine Mel Mount Janine Melnitz was played by Annie Potts. Annie Potts, I think she works this so well with this role is because it actually looks like that she would be a secretary. So I thought she did a good job. Dana Barrett was played by Sigourney Weaver. I thought she did good. Lewis Tully was played by Rick Moranis. Um, I think he did good. He was annoying, but that was what his character was supposed to be. He was supposed to be that annoying, nerdy guy. I just kind of wonder if they had John Candy actually be, um, you know, I thought if they had John Candy be Rick Moranis, if they would have been better. Walter Peck was played by William Atherton. I thought he did a great job in that role as well. Um, Lenny Koch and Mayor of the City of New York. who was the mayor of the city of New York, was played by David Margulis. I thought he did a good job as the mayor, and Gozer was played by Salvita Joven, and he was voiced by um, um, Gozer also was voiced by somebody else actually. Gozer was voiced by Patty Edwards. I thought Gozer had a fine role in this movie. Overall, the cast it had a very good cast in this film. The cast definitely make this movie. The story's good. The cast is great. And overall, just a great movie all around. It was very successful business wise, and obviously this movie ended up being a huge success. There's TV shows on Disney Channel, and there's TV shows just in general that pretty much try to do this movie. When you see somebody come out with like the vacuums and stuff, like they have the proton packs, they try to pretty much redo Ghostbusters, and I think they do an okay job at doing that. And obviously, this movie, when it comes down to like success, also this movie, this movie also has had a couple of sequels. They originally tried to make a TV show out of it, called The Real Ghostbusters, which Aykroyd, Ramis, and Weidman weren't comfortable with, so it was scrapped shortly afterwards, and they wanted to work on other projects, so eventually they decided to make the second film, which I'll be reviewing next, Ghostbusters 2, in 1989. They were going to make another one. It says a script for a potential third film was under development by Gene Stupinski and Lee Eisenberg, the writing team that worked with Ramis on the 2009 comedy Year One. According to Ramis, the four main cast members from the original were potentially to have minor on-screen roles. The concept is that the older Ghostbusters would appear in the film in some mentor capacity. Comments from Murray in August 2010, after Year One's release, suggested that the latter's poor reception made a new Ghostbusters sequel unlikely. 2 months later, Aykroyd downplayed Murray's comments, saying Stupinski and Eisenberg wrote Bill the comic role of a lifetime, and the new Ghostbusters and the old one are well represented in it. They wrote a strong first draft. In February 2012, Aykroyd said the script must be perfect. We cannot release a film that is anything less than that. We have more work to do. Unfortunately, on February 24th, 2014, Ramis died, causing Sony Pictures to reevaluate the script that they were writing for Ghostbusters 3. I believe, and obviously Egon, that's obviously Egon in this film. So they were originally going to start production in 2015, but but Raymond decided to pull out of the directing the film in light of Raymond's death. Raymond, however, will help to find a new director. Then Phil Lord and Chris Miller were revealed on March 20th, 2014 to direct the film, and pretty much that's that. So they pretty much did make another one. They made one in 2016 last year, which I'll also be reviewing, so I'm not going to go into too much backstory about that. And obviously, when it comes down to like a legacy, in 2017, Royal Ontario Museum paleontologist Victoria Obner and David Evans were studying a fossil of a newly discovered ankylosaur species and decided that its head resembled that of Zool from Ghostbusters. Accordingly, they named the species Zool Huvaster. So that's actually so pretty much it caused an old fossil to be named after it. So, they were named after an old fossil, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I really don't have anything else left to say. Thank you guys for watching this video. I will be back a little bit later on to review the second Ghostbusters. I just gotta go watch it first. But that's pretty much it, guys. Please make sure you guys subscribe and do all that stuff. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.